is a very bad thing for you.
You suing your trainer?
No, I love my trainer, but believe me, I'm going home.
Lawsuit.
I'm taking all the drugs the law allows. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, Larry Brown says Kentucky should go undefeated. Michelle Roberts puts Adam Silver on blast. And LeBron won't let his kids play football. But we begin today with the notion that somehow an unbeaten Florida State football team could be left out of these inaugural playoffs. This was raised by Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports. Dodd points to the fact that unbeaten Florida State has already slipped below one-loss Oregon to number 3. Wilbon, if the Blue Ribbon Committee evaluates body of work above everything, can you see this happening?
Tony, I don't put anything past people who deal with voting, whether it's a panel or a board or whatever you want to call it, Blue Ribbon or not. People, in many cases, I know and respect their work and respect them. But when it comes to getting people in a room to evaluate something in college sports, I don't put anything past them. I think there are too many agendas you don't see in professional sports. I, not under any circumstances, would leave Florida State out of my top 4 if they're undefeated. Isn't the ACC one of the blessed conferences in college football?
Yes, it is.
Then what the hell? If you're going to bless a conference and say, oh, wait, you're not good enough, then relegate them. Then bring somebody else in.
Wait, hold on a second. There's no rule that says every conference must be represented.
I didn't say that.
There's no rule of that.
No, wait. If they had one loss, okay. But if you're saying that these people are undefeated and they've been ranked all year, don't come back and tell me that what they've done is inadequate.
I'm going to sketch out a way that you could leave them out based on the body of work.
With undefeated?
Yes. Okay. Their strength of schedule is weaker than other people's. They don't have nearly the point differential in victory that they had last year.
Point differential doesn't matter.
No, I think everything matters. They're not as good as they were last year, and they've been behind in the second half 4 different times this year.
Come back.
And I understand that. Now, my way of thinking is that politically, you can't take the defending champions, and if they are still undefeated, leave them out. Because you know why? Because you know what it would look like? It would look like you didn't like Jameis Winston.
It's political.
And it would look like you didn't like Jimbo Fisher.
It's what's wrong with college sports. But rather than just put the obvious teams out there and let them play, for 100 years, people stood in the way of a playoff with their lies and foolishness, and now...
4, but I don't think it's going to happen.
And you know what? Then go to people in a room who can use the eye test and tell me Florida State's not one of the best 4. I don't want to hear that.
They may not be. They may not be.
Please.
They're not Alabama in your mind, are they?
No. No, but they're undefeated. Not put them in over Alabama with 1 loss if it came to that. Florida State's undefeated.
Even though you think Alabama's better. Right? Do you think Alabama's better?
I think Florida State deserves to be in the Final Four.
Well,
they're more deserving than Alabama. How about that?
The witness is
more deserving.
Asked to answer the question.
Ask and answer. More deserving. I got you.
No, you didn't.
Let's move to college basketball, which, believe it or not, begins tomorrow, Tony. And the number 1 story going in is Kentucky, and a team stacked with talent. An old ball coach who knows a thing or two about talent, Larry Brown,
camp counselor,
tells USA Today that Kentucky, quote, should go 45-0 with that talent. If you take their first and second teams and split them up, they'd probably have the number 1 and number 2 teams in the nation, close quote. So, Tony, how should Coach Cal and Big Blue Nation feel about that assessment to start the season?
I think first you have to say that Larry Brown and John Calipari are old friends, that Cal was a coach for Larry at Kansas. And
Larry's not trying to clown
Not at all. And he's not trying to pin a loss on him. And Calipari knows that Larry means this in the best way.
Pressure, though.
But if I were Calipari, this is what I would think. I would think, I got really good talent. I know I got good talent. We may very well be the best team in the country. But 45-0, does he really want me to go through undefeated? And I would be a little skittish about just that part of the comment.
Well, you look at the names of the players. First of all, you don't even recognize players in college basketball now because they're all coming in for the first time. They're all coming in from high school. But Aaron and Andrew Harrison, they're coming back. 6'6" backcourt, by the way. Willie Cauley-Stein, 7 feet up front. Alex Poitras, 6'8". Karl Anthony Towns, 6'11". These kids are all SEC to start. And, Tony, there's going to be some freshman or 2 that Cal's recruited who's going to crash the party and be all SEC as well. Tony, I can't wait. That's right, Towns is a freshman. I can't wait to see Kentucky. Look, I don't get into college basketball until sort of after the NFL playoffs are going, which squeezes college basketball season in February and March. I want to see Kentucky.
John Calipari is Jerry Jones. He's a guy who understands the circus atmosphere. He's a guy who welcomes people to the tent. He's a guy who courts all the publicity and usually knows what to do with it. He recruits a certain type of player who's going to get this publicity, and he's comfortable with it. But you and I both know this. As popular as Kentucky is in Kentucky,
they're just that unpopular with everybody else.
And people want to see them go 0-45.
Yeah.
And yet at the end of the year, why do I think they're going to be in the Final Four?
Over, under. Losses for Kentucky basketball this regular season.
2 at the most. 2.
1.
Okay.
I'm going to go under. I'm not going 0.
Michelle Roberts, the new head of the NBA Players Association, took a very provocative and hard line yesterday talking to our friend Pablo Torre. Among other inflammatory things, she said, quote, there would be no money if not for the players. Let's call it what it is. There would be no money. 30 more owners can come in and nothing will change. These players go, the game will change, so let's stop pretending, unquote. Wilbon, is this just posturing or is it a setup for another NBA work stoppage?
Tony, I don't know her well enough for her work to know what her agenda is. And this is a brilliant woman. Professionally, we know that just from her resume alone and her work. And so this is beyond doubt. But if a man said these things, we would say, what a raging egomaniac to say these particular things, given the amount of money that's out there for the owners and players to split up. It seems wildly naive to me. And it basically says, oh, yeah, I'm different. We're not just ready to be locked out. We can walk out and you got nothing. And I'm thinking, really? What have you been paying attention to in sports for the last 30 years?
I have to tell you that that's exactly what it sounds like to me. It sounds like, because everybody believes that the owners would like to lock the players out so that they could reduce the size of the contract, they could reduce the size of the payout and all of that. And this sounds like we're going to beat you to it. We're going to walk. And that there are two things that she has to know, and I think everybody has to know. And one is, when the NFL used replacement players, people still went to the games, people still rooted for the teams. The players aren't as important maybe as you think they are, because you can bring in more players.
They're more important in basketball than any sport.
Okay.
I'm going to give her that.
Okay.
They are, because they're the biggest stars in sports.
The second thing you have to know is when the NBA, when they had the lockout before and people returned and started on December 25th, said it was the greatest season that anybody ever saw.
I don't, look, Tony, maybe she's doing this publicly. And she wants to stir it up and she wants to build a consensus. And maybe this is all tactical because, again, she's a brilliant person. But you are not just going to reinvent the public's interest in basketball because you say so. Well, that is the part that is like NFL level of arrogance on her part. If these public utterances are what she really feels.
Some of the things she said I agree with. I don't think there should be a salary cap at all. There's no salary cap in baseball, and Kansas City went to the World Series. I think you should be able to come into the league whenever you want.
I don't.
And, well, see, I think that, and I don't think there should be a rookie salary cap. I don't understand.
Veteran, you know what?
I don't get it.
Players, Tony. See, she can talk about players ready to sit out. What happens every time?
They're not going to sit out. They're going to sit out.
Well, shouldn't you know the temperature of your own room?
Maybe she did this. Okay. And just listen to the sound of her own finger in the air.
Maybe. Interesting LeBron story, not really involving LeBron. The former All-Ohio receiver told reporters he has banned his sons, ages 7 and 10, from playing football. Quote, only basketball, baseball, and soccer are allowed in my house, close quote. A broken wrist in part drove LeBron out of football in high school, and he's acutely aware of the studies involving concussions in young football players. Tony, you think LeBron taking this position publicly will influence the way other parents feel about their sons playing football?
I don't think so. I completely understand why LeBron is taking this position. We have heard the President of the United States say that if he had sons, he's not sure that he would let them play football. This is the great fear for football, that young kids will start on the way to some concussion syndrome that will leave them brain battered. And I understand all of that. But I think parents make this decision for themselves. And I think the kids want to play football. And I think that their friends want them to play football. They say, hey, how come you're not playing football? And that's a difficult position to say, my mom and dad won't let me. That's difficult. It may get easier.
You know what? My old man said that, and I didn't want to get hit, so he didn't have to really twist my arm. I got a 6-year-old, and I've discussed this at length with David Pollack, our colleague, who has a 6-year-old. I think our sons are born on the same day. And David Pollack played professional football. He suffered a broken neck early in his career with the Cincinnati Bengals, and has since said to me on the record, I'm glad this happened because I'm glad I got out before all kinds of injuries reduced me physically. And David is, very thoughtful on this topic, and to me, he bears listening to more than anybody, including, if you will, LeBron.
Does he say that he won't let his son play
He says he doesn't want him to play. What? Not going to let him. But I've talked to other guys, like my friend Warren Sapp, and Sapp said, wait a minute. He has looked at the studies for soccer and other sports and skating and bicycling, and Sapp said, wait a minute, he can get hurt doing all these other things. It was a proud day when my son came to me and said, I want to play.
David
and I understand
Robinson,
these positions.
who you love.
I love David Robinson.
His kid's a big-time player at Notre Dame,
He was scared.
Right?
David has told me he was scared to death.
Okay, but he's a big-time player at Notre Dame. Jerry Rice's children play football. Joe Montana's children play football. Here's what I think might happen. I think you might hold out an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old. But when you get to high school, you might think differently about it. And the reason people want to play football is simple. There's a lot of opportunity there. It's a 55-man roster. And it turns over and you can make money. There's risk in everything, and players understand it.
You can't convince me, no matter what study you come up with, that anything is as risky as playing football.
Well,
you can't
boxing
convince me of that.
And the culture changes.
Boxing went away.
That's right.
As we knew it.
And
we loved it.
It may go away for football, but I don't think it's going away this year.
No,
because high school football participation is actually
But you know what? Youth football participation?
Down. That's what I'm saying. 8-year-old and 16-year-olds are different. Minutes from now, we expect from our PTI internal polling numbers that Clayton Kershaw will be named the National League's most valuable player.
We got polling?
Wilbon, yes, we do. You pointed out yesterday that a brilliant sports writer once told you that in pro sports, all that matters is the postseason. And Kershaw had a terrible postseason. So shouldn't Kershaw feel the slightest bit sheepish picking up his award?
I forget that sports writer's name who once told me about the postseason versus the regular season.
It'll come to me soon.
It'll come to me. Sheepish. You know, Tony, I was trying to draw an analogy to something else in sports, and the only thing I could really come up with was Dirk Nowitzki, who won the MVP and lost in the first round in almost embarrassing fashion. People mocked Dirk and the Dallas Mavericks for losing in the first round to Golden State that year. It's about 8 years ago.
Season was still going on. He was awarded that.
Yes, the postseason was still going on.
That's right. There's distance here.
Now, you know what? And I remember Dirk it seemed like he was almost in hiding. Now, he comes back later, he wins a championship, and his greatness is validated beyond that award. And I wonder, probably he didn't feel sheepish, not other than in the moment. And maybe if Kershaw does, he shouldn't feel. He doesn't need to. Maybe he does, but he has plenty of time to have his greatness validated.
Yeah, I think that what Kershaw probably feels, and I wouldn't feel sheepish, but I think what he probably feels is, boy, I wish I had done better in the playoffs. And why haven't I done better in the playoffs? And I've got to go out and do better in the playoffs. But I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. In the last 10, 12 years, however many, there'd only be 2 pitchers who ever won MVP. There'd be Verlander and there'd be Kershaw. We could sit here and scratch our heads and not come up with all the everyday players who have won the MVP.
Tony, there's a dominance.
So this is a huge honor.
There's no question.
Huge.
But even as you do this, you know there's another pitcher out there. We talked about this yesterday. There's another pitcher out there, Madison Bumgarner, in your own division who's got this thing that you are jealous of.
Buster Posey and Andrew McCutchen and Giancarlo Stanton, if he'd played the whole year, maybe they would get it. So there's a certain amount of luck, but he got them to the playoffs.
We did.
He dominated.
By the way, I thought of that sports writer's name, Mike Lupica.
Let's take a break. But Jaws has reviewed the tape, and we'll tell. It's been nearly 40 years since Ron Jaworski and I were part of the Eagles' cheesesteak backfield.
What?
He was the steak and I was the cheese.
Okay.
But we are reunited today again to talk football, and Wilbon's here too, though God knows why.
By.
Welcome, Jaws. Let's start with this. The Eagles' current quarterback, Mark Sanchez. Jaws, you have looked at the tape. Are you crediting Sanchez or the system?
Well, I think certainly Mark Sanchez Monday night against Carolina had a rock-solid football game, but the system in Philadelphia is terrific. And, oh, by the way, so is the talent. On the offensive line, it was magnificent on Monday night against Carolina. Sanchez was hit only one time on close to 40 dropbacks, so the talent around him is very good. But Chip Kelly's system, and I love looking at the tape. Whenever I get on Tuesday, one of the first tapes I look at, because Chip Kelly has the incredible talent to get the primary receiver open. Very seldom on Monday night did Mark Sanchez have to go through his reading progression. Chip Kelly set him up for success.
Let's move west for a second, Jaws, because Bruce Arians with Carson Palmer in there, their system was pretty good, and they were rolling. Of course, Palmer is now out for the season. And Bruce Arians says Drew Stanton can carry the Cardinals to the Super Bowl. What is it that Stanton does pretty well? Where does he have to improve in order for him to actually make that happen?
You know, I actually just came down from my office where I looked at his 101 dropbacks this season. He only threw 93 of them. He had 5 sacks and 3 scrambles. So I went through all the throws that he made. And we sometimes tend to forget Drew Stanton has been around the National Football League since 2007. So when you watch him on the field, he has incredible field mentality. In other words, he sees the field. He's intelligent with where he makes his throws. So when you look at a quarterback that's been around that long, you understand he's not a rookie when you look at the tape. Now, there are some concerns that I have. Number one is the deep ball. With Carson Palmer, the ball would explode out of his hands down the field. When you watch Drew Stanton, the ball kind of loses energy in the throws. But the one thing I also like, his mobility, the ability to get outside the pocket and throw the ball with accuracy, and his ability to read progression. So I don't think they're going to be a Super Bowl team, but they'll be a playoff team and pretty good with Drew Stanton.
Jaws, why is it that Ndamukong Suh finally has turned potential into reality? What's happened at this point?
He's got a move, and I'm going to call it the two-hand elbow trap. And, oh, by the way, I have a guy on my staff named Darryl Campbell who played with the Bears, and he played with the Buccaneers in the defensive line. So he told me that cool buzzword for it. So the two-hand elbow trap. In other words, Ndamukong Suh, when an offensive lineman reaches out with his hands to block him, will snap him by the elbows, trap him inside, and just flip him out of the way. And Ndamukong Suh also plays all the defensive line positions. He's great with stunts and slants. And Jim Washburn, one of the defensive line coaches, does a great job of energizing Ndamukong Suh and the incredible power that he has.
I'll say, Jaws, this is about coaching largely and just getting the most out of Suh for the first time.
Yeah, I think that has something to do with it. And I think he assumed another larger responsibility when Nick Fairley went out. I think Ndamukong Suh said, hey, you know, I've now got to be the anchor of this defensive line. He's always been a terrific player, but this year it seems to have risen to another level.
We get you out of here on this. Tonight's game is the Bills at the Dolphins. What should we be watching for?
I always look for one key matchup that could determine the winner of the game. And I'm going to look at this one. Sammy Watkins against Brent Grimes. Grimes had his hands full last week against Calvin Johnson, and he held up very well. I think if Grimes wins this matchup, the Dolphins will win.
Thank you, Jaws,
Thank you,
as
Jaws.
always.
Appreciate it.
Let's take a break, but we still need to talk about J.R. Smith ignoring Melo. Happy time, people. Happy 35th birthday, Meta World Peace. I believe Ron Artest, in whatever form, gets far too much publicity on this show.
What?
But you may remember this summer when he said that in the Chinese Basketball League, where he calls himself the panda's friend, his shoes would be adorned with stuffed pandas. Here's the proof he actually meant it.
There are things that Artest has done I don't like, but I really like Ron Artest. When he changed his name to Meta World Peace, I said, what should I call you? He goes, Ron.
Great. A not-so-happy anniversary, Blake Griffin. On this day last year, you got tangled up with Serge Ibaka, and Matt Barnes stepped in to defend him. In related Griffin notoriety news, he has been charged with a misdemeanor battery for an incident in Las Vegas where he allegedly got so angry at a man taking cell phone pictures that he, quote, squeezed his shoulder and or slapped him in the face, unquote. Wilbon, big deal?
You know, dumping that water on the fan aside, I don't believe this. I don't believe the charge.
Happy trails to another game for the Knicks. Down 2 to the Magic last night, and with Carmelo Anthony clearly calling for the ball, J.R. Smith, your boy, threw up a wild three-pointer that missed the rim wide left.
Oh, no.
That drops the Knicks to 2-7. The only team worse than them in the Eastern Conference is Philadelphia, and they're trying to be bad.
Are you trying to say you think Melo should have had the last shot there, Tony?
On that team, absolutely. No errors recognized. We go to the big finish. The Trailblazers put up 84 in the first half of their win over the Nuggets last night. Defend Denver.
You can't. Denver is next to last. Only the Lakers worse in defense in the NBA right now. Scott Boras says Barry Zito's going to return to baseball next season. Is that a good idea?
He has the right to try. He's a Cy Young one. Yes.
Okay.
Burt Reynolds will plant the spear for FSU against Boston College. Your favorite Burt Reynolds movie?
I don't remember his movies. I liked him with Johnny Carson and Dinah Shore and Sally Field. I liked him on TV.
I like Breaking In.
Joakim Noah didn't watch Raptors-Sixers tape ahead of tonight's game in Toronto, saying, I wouldn't watch that bleep. You okay with that?
That's cold. What if they trade him there? Sixers at the Mavs tonight. Will Philly get its first win?
The Bulls going to trade Joakim Noah to Philly?
Never know what they could get.
120 to 88. No wonder why.
We're out of time. We'll try and do better the next time. And I'm Tony Kornheiser.
I'm Mike Wilbon.